Ooh, I like that.
Hello, I'd like to start the meeting of the May 27th Housing and Economic Development Committee. Thank you all for joining us. And I know we do have some public comment this morning. First, I'd like to introduce Greg Mezzi from the town of Dryden. Greg, you're all set? Go ahead.
Great. Hi, thanks, Martha. Thanks for some time today. Wanted to come and introduce myself. My name is Greg Mezzi. I am a member of the Strategic Tourism Planning Board and also sit on the Budget Committee for the SCPB. I'm coming here today because on our Budget Committee, recently we started having the conversation around the use of the American Rescue Plan funds that's been allocated to the county and then parsed out to the various committee and budget lines. We as the STPB and myself personally feel strongly that we would, I guess, urge the county and the city to consider how they're planning to use those American Rescue Fund dollars. And while we're grateful for the opportunity to have those in the 22 and 23 budget, we do feel that in the tourism sector, there is a real need to make an investment in our workforce in the current year, and that it's an urgent need because there has been significant job loss in the tourism sector within Tompkins County and within the city. And we would encourage you all as you're having the conversation on how to use and when to use those funds, that you strongly consider a more urgent need current use of those dollars to help support and grow back the tourism workforce. We also made a motion and proposed in the STPB that we put together an ad hoc committee of different members of the STPB and other members of the area economic development agencies to try to work up a solution that then we could present to both the city and the county for ways that those funds might have the highest and best use most immediately. So that's all I really have. Just wanted to come on and encourage you all to give serious consideration to using those funds in the current fiscal year for growth within the tourism workforce. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Greg. Appreciate that. Is there any other public comment or anybody else on here who'd like to speak to the committee? Kelly.
Sorry, I'm actually have no voice, which is why I wasn't sure to even put myself on there. But I want to echo what Greg's saying, and I appreciate that he let you all know the situation that the STPB is currently in regards to our budget committee and the urgent need of the sector. And it's not just hotels, restaurants, it's everything, quite frankly. Everybody's struggling for workforce, and this is only going to lead to a much harder climb out of recovery, because whether anybody realizes it or not, restaurants, hotels, all the things that collect majority of those taxes are not at capacity right now. They are not running at capacity. We could be based on the demand, but we do not have the workforce to support the demand right now. And that is going to continue through our busy season, which is now through all the way until November. And sadly, the end of the extra $300 is going to happen when we actually are going to be on a downturn into the slow season. So this is an immediate urgent action that the Strategic Tourism Planning Board is really looking at. So I just encourage you to really take a hard look at those funds and think about using them in this fiscal year to help this sector recover. This sector has been just killed through this pandemic. So I'm going to stay on if you have questions when Nick does his report anyway for the STPB. So thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks very much for all of you who can stay on. Shauna, did you have your hand up? But no, go ahead, Shauna.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. As far as if there were funds that were allocated, what would they be used for if it's workforce?
Yeah, so we created an ad hoc committee and we did meet the other day with, as Greg mentioned, other economic development agencies, including the chamber. We're talking with Heather McDaniel, and all of us are trying to put together a kind of rough outline of how we would see some sort of incentive to get people back to work into those sectors, and how we can actually keep them. So retention's also a huge problem right now, because the people like myself that worked all the way through the pandemic, we're tired. It was not easy. I worked more during the pandemic than I have in the last 20 years in this industry. So we have a problem right now with trying to reward the people that actually hung in there and actually took pay cuts, and then try to get the people back into the workforce. And so it's going to take some kind of incentive program. I realize we don't have all those answers, but we do have some thoughts on it, and we're already putting those on paper. I know Jennifer Tavares is working very hard to get something written to give to you and also the city, because both of you are receiving those funds.
Thank you.
Before I go to Henry, to pick up on what Greg said about the 2022 and 2023 budgets, you'll remember in Jason's budget presentation at the retreat, his proposal was to use a combination of ARP money and fund balance to bring tourism back in the 2022 budget to the 2020 budget. But that did not include anything current, which obviously he was talking about the 2022 budget. So that's the gap we're talking about now. Henry.
Yes, thank you, Kelly and Greg, for speaking to this issue. I had to unfortunately not make the last STPB meeting. Do you know what the capacity is that the restaurants or the tourism industry, what they're working under in terms of employees?
I know Jennifer might have more information on that, but I can speak only to my hotel, my restaurant, however, with true numbers. But then I know, speaking to many of our partners, because we are always in communication with other partners. So just to put it in perspective, normal function, Kilpatrick's would be open 7 days a week for lunch and dinner. We are currently open 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday, only for dinner. We could not staff that if we tried. We couldn't, not possible. We also can't stay open later. We don't have the staff for that. So we're closing much earlier. This is common right now in our industry. If you go out right now, you're going to pretty much see that nobody's really changed that 10 o'clock time. If you've been out at all on a Friday or Saturday night, you may have noticed.
I noticed that the restaurants do close early.
Okay. It has nothing.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do anymore. It has nothing to do anymore with restrictions and guidelines given by the state. It has completely to do with staffing problems. Oh. So as that speaks to you, money in your pocket. Every hour we're not open, we're not collecting any sales taxes. We're not collecting things. On the hotel sides, we have hotels that are not running at full capacity because they can't clean the rooms. So to you, that is occupancy and sales tax driven. So I have 104 rooms. Right now we're in a renovation, but we actually would have forced them to be done by now, but we actually can't staff it anyway. So we haven't been really pushing them to finish. So we are running at 72 rooms. So you can do the math on that for this coming weekend, and it's a lot of sales tax dollars. I will tell you that for free. We are not the only hotel like that right now.
Okay, we're definitely going to go into this a little more later in the meeting. I'll take Mike Sigler, and then let's move on, because the next item is Jason helping us to understand what the opportunities are with the ARPA. So Mike.
Just two quick questions. I mean, staffing is a problem everywhere, I think, right now, but is part of the problem with cleaning the rooms because of the level when you have to clean them now? Like, are we still cleaning for COVID, even though the science has kind of advanced beyond that? saying that surfaces aren't really a transmission vector?
Yeah. So again, can only speak for Hilton products. Hilton has its own standard. Hilton has a program called Clean Stay. We have to follow that. They have not changed the guidelines on that. It probably makes the cleaning process about a 10-minute longer per room clean. Not huge necessarily. But what really is huge is the amount of garbage that people are making now, which also should be a whole nother thing we'll have to deal with eventually. Because everyone went to take out containers and all this garbage. And so that's a whole nother issue. So that probably adds another 5. So we're running about an average of about 15 extra minutes to clean guest rooms. I don't think though that's the problem as far as that situation. And we are actually, I know wage comes in, we are trying to hire people at higher wages and stuff. It still does not help that we just necessarily, we can't match what they're getting staying home right now. So.
And Mike, you had something else?
That was it. They can't match what they're getting.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks so very much, folks. We do have, this item on the agenda in a little bit and Nick has something in our packets as well. So this is only the start of this conversation, not the end of it. Morning, Jason. Thanks so much. Oh, first let's do the minutes from April 22nd. Could I get a motion from the committee? Moved by Annie, second by Shauna. Any discussion or questions? All right, let's vote. Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Shauna,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so the minutes pass unanimously. Thank you very much. Jason, welcome and thanks very much for the research I know that you're doing on the American Rescue Plan. What can you tell us about what's possible and where we stand on it?
Well, we sent out a list of questions to NISAC, and the response we got back is we don't have any answers for you, but we're going to send it to NACO, and they're, they're in discussion with NACO on a regular basis as they're preparing comments back to Treasury about what to do. So I think it's when we get answers, and and that's really more implementation logistics of how you draw down money, how you use that money, and what it can be used for specifically. We put together some thoughts about the 2022 budget with respect to how you can use some of this funding for supported agencies and potential for the tourism program, and that probably holds true as well for the current year versus in a future year. What's unknown is how quickly is it going to recover. What type of, Nick is starting to gather some of that data, and you'll know a little bit more come a few more months and how the year fares. And, the question about, availability of staff and employees and how that's being impacted by the enhanced unemployment benefit is an ongoing conversation that we have now. That said, I think the bigger picture when we look at this funding, and I mentioned this before, and I've just done some analysis on it. When you look at using this funding, using it to offset your longer term capital costs, I think is where you're going to get the biggest return in terms of the county's budget and impact. I looked at, funding, some of the projects that we normally would bond for. And if we didn't bond for them and paid cash for capital, it opens up anywhere around $1.5 million worth of capacity in your operating budget, which is really the structural piece that allows you to begin to recoup funding for support agencies as well as for restoration of positions that you may need. It also opens up and elevates your capital plan for the things that you took out of it as a result of this. So moving forward, your net zero initiative from 2040 back to 2030 is a practical achievement at this point in time. So when you look at that, I think those are the things that the bigger picture ones that you want to try to understand, because it's going to provide that structural relief and support to your budget, which is ultimately being hindered by the lack of revenue. I think there needs to be some side conversations about, is there something to be done, this year or not, with respect to some, for example, some of the arguments that have been made with tourism. I think there's more to be dug into with that, and understanding the market in general and how you respond to that. So, in general, I think that's where I would, again, encourage the legislature to start to look longer term, is how do you use this larger group of money to have impact on your budget longer term? Because it's one-time money. You can't use it to support your operating budget, but if you can avoid debt now that you would normally take on, it opens up capacity in your budget longer term to support programs that would take longer to recover if you had to only rely on revenue recovery, because revenue recovery is frankly the one unknown that we don't know. We don't know what revenue recovery is at this point, how fast it's going to be, how slow it's going to be, what are going to be the different elements, what's going to return and what's not going to return in the makeup of that market. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay, actually, I was kind of looking more like what are the rules, under what we know. And I know I and a lot of people have gone to some of those NACO calls, et cetera, about what are our constraints on spending the money.
Sure. I mean, I don't think we don't know. I mean, we know a little bit more than we did before, but, I think it still comes back down to the easiest way to identify, how do you draw down and how do you qualify for this money in the simplest and shortest amount of steps. So for this case, it can be identifying loss of revenue as your primary way of being able to draw down these funds, then that's the way I would approach it. There's just a few other, so my point being is that you don't have 15 different ways in which you're trying to justify the use of this funding, where it's only one way, and this way you draw down this large chunk of money related to loss of revenue, and then you have some discretion within that to be able to use that funding the way you need to use it. The other thing that we started to look into is that you can use it to pay for retirement payments related to essential workers. So, you have quite a few essential workers, and whatever your annual retirement bill is, which is upwards of $6-7 million, I bet you at least half of that is related to essential workers. So if you were to qualify that based on that purpose, tied into that specific purpose, then essentially the money that you levy taxes for to support that is no longer being used to pay for that bill. So eventually you have that amount of money available to support other things. The interim rule kind of identifies nonprofits as a usable source. It identifies tourism initiatives as a usable source. I don't think there's any question about that. I think there's several things you got to think about. One, what is the bigger picture and longer term as to how you're going to make significant impact. Two, are there shorter impacts that, shorter term initiatives that can be supportive, but being sure you're keeping an eye on that this isn't leading to a longer dependable need, which isn't going to be there in 2 years. When we talk about not relying on this for an operating source is going to be important. So however you decide to commit this funding, you want to make sure it isn't, in 2-3 years, they're going to be coming back saying, well, you gave it to us then and we really need it. Otherwise, this is going to go away. Like, that's what you want to be clear you don't want to get into. So it's a blend and it's a balance of what do you need to recover with the idea that when recovery is back or when you're at pre-COVID times again, it's self-sustaining and no longer needs this stimulus to do that. That's the balance that you're going to want to try to look at as you start to look at how you dedicate and commit this funding.
So I think everybody's very aware it's only sort of one-time funding, like 10 million this year and 10 million next year, or just under 10 million a year. I'm curious about the 1.5 million in operating that it would free up for cash if we paid cash for capital projects.
Sure.
Rick Snyder, and he's on the call for an analysis. And just as an example, if you took out $1 million on a $20 million on a 20-year bond, the annual savings is about $14,000 a year.
Yeah.
And the interest rate of 2.5%. So Rick, if you want, this is one of, that seems to me is one option. The funding is unusually broad. The funding opportunities are unusually broad given other kinds of funding streams we get. And so that is one strategy. I think there are a lot of different strategies for how we build back, how we recover. So, I'm looking at the clock again. I don't know if I don't want to spend a lot of time on one strategy, but I do see Henry's hand up. So why don't we go there?
Yes, thank you for the analysis, Jason. I was curious, the portal opened on May 10th, and I know that about a third of the amounts have gone out already. Do we need to fully explain in our request for the funding of exactly what we're going to do with it? Or can it be very general and then we can decide once we get the funding?
Yeah, you don't have to explain at this point in time because your tracking and uses of it is another function.
Do we know, I know one of the, so we get 19.8 or 7 based on our population. This calculation of lost revenue within that 19 million, calculation of lost revenue tells us how flexibly we can use that money. Have you been able to nail down that figure yet? What you estimate, how much we can call lost revenue legitimate?
So the question about lost revenue is still a little bit open with respect to what they define as entire entity. And that was one of the questions we've asked. As they define entire entity, if we look at all of our general fund revenue and I capture it, then that's one way of doing it. That would be great. I have a feeling it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I have a feeling we probably have to pull out certain federal funding. And then the question would be federal funding that state pass through. Does that have to be pulled out? Like those are some of the questions that we have to get clarity on. And we'll get it. I mean, ISAC is going to, every county's in the same boat as to how they interpret this. So I think that's something we have to determine. And when that comes out, then we'll be able to give a better understanding as to what does lost revenue look like. Sales tax was much greater than that 4%, growth factor. It was 6.5%. But if it's a whole entity, meaning all revenues, that may not be that relevant. We may be back to the 4%. Either way, it's going to be a big chunk of change that could be covered under lost revenue if we use that 4%, that 4.1%, method, which is versus the average growth over the last 3 years. So when you know more clarity about those specifics, then we'll be able to give a better estimate as to what falls and how you draw that down. So if you use that as your justification, then that opens that up to what can be some different uses. Now you can draw it down for specific other purposes. And I think that's where we get into the question of how can we do it with a minimal amount of tags onto this, because that becomes, I think, it's going to be more of an accounting issue. Rick is talking right now, the state's probably going to be coming up with some separate charts of accounts and so on and so forth that will help manage it internally, but that's yet to happen. So, I mean, we need to know more of that information. A little bit of point about the debt and debt relief. So you're right. If you do look at bonding debt from a 20-year period of time, there's only certain savings. One thing you got to keep in mind. So if I take projects like road maintenance program, the facility restoration program, downtown office building, some other different highway projects that you would have intended to bond, you would have intended them for 10 or 15 years. When you look at that type of borrowing for 10 to 15 years, and I take a series of 6 or 7 projects that you would have otherwise bonded, when you get into years 23, 24, you're alleviating 1.5 million a year of debt for a 10 or 15 year period, cumulative with all those projects. So all of them, if you're no longer bonding them, you're paying cash for capital, you now have capacity either to not increase your capital program contribution as much, or move other projects up on the scale, like we pushed back the green facilities initiative, you move that up, or if you don't increase your capital contribution, you have the ability to support other agencies or restoration of positions quicker, so you don't have to wait as long for revenue recovery. That's the logic.
So I understand that whole idea. We've done that in the past where, for example, we were at the end of the budget season trying to get under a tax cap level or a 2% level or something. And we've said, okay, we can put some cash into the capital program and we won't have to bond for that. And so that's not a bad thing to do. And I understand that that's one policy recommendation we ought to look at, but there are a lot of other policies that the legislature will need to review and look at the pros and cons. The issue of drawing down the money, we can draw the money and get it into a bank account. I understand an interest-bearing bank account at the same time as we sort of figure out how we want to spend it. So do we know yet about, and I know Rick is on, Rick and his office are drinking from a fire hose dealing with the audits that are going on right now, but do we have any other update on the status of our fund balance, even a rough number? And I know, you sort of do a snapshot go ahead, Rick. Do you have if you have any other information for us?
I sent to Jason a few days ago what our estimates are that the auditors now have cleared out. They'll be working for the next 3 weeks to finish our financial statements, but we do have an analysis done, prepared. I don't know, Jason, have you shared it with anyone yet? Or
I was under the impression it wasn't final yet, Rick, so I didn't share with anybody.
no?
Okay, so it's up to you if you want to do that.
I can send it out to all legislatures, or maybe I'll report on it Tuesday night, because we do have, again, it's not our final audited number, but we're past that point of no return. We're not going to be making any more journal entries. So we do have preliminary numbers for the total reserves and the unappropriated reserves. So I can bring that to you. I'll send that out to you all, probably talk about it a little bit at our next meeting.
Okay, that'd be great, because I mean, that kind of helps us shape our understanding of what kind of a hole we're in as internally. What does it mean that we lost so much in sales tax, and what does it mean for our full fiscal health? So that's just one piece of the picture here that we've been looking for. So, all right.
Because of all the grants that we booked at year end for FEMA, the CARES Act, other COVID related monies, many things were booked as revenues at the end of the year, at the very end of the year. So that softened the blow considerably. In the general fund, for instance, the unassigned fund balance went up $1.8 million.
Okay.
So we're not looking at a deficit for 2020 in the general fund.
All right. And that was, I think, the idea of all the federal money. So that's good news. All right. Thank you both very, very much. I will, obviously this is just the start. We have a lot to learn about ARP and to figure out as a legislature. I'm watching the clock. So I wanted to just move in this section. Thanks very much, Jason. Thank you, Rick. Was there anything you want to add?
Yeah, just to add that you obviously can't use any of this funding for your fund balance.
No, I understand, but like it's one-time money. If you're backfill the 2022 budget with if you have fund balance to backfill, say the tourism program, then the ARP money, because that you showed that in your budget presentation, that you sort of go one or the other because they're both one-time money. So.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so just to go on to as far as chair's report, I did want to see if we have legislator thoughts so far about the priorities. This is actually, I was kind of inspired by something that Jason said in a different meeting on Monday about a strategic planning process. We had actually started to engage in a strategic planning process in early 2020. I have notes of a January 9th, 2020 meeting where we started talking about strategic planning. And then that was the last meeting about it. We ended up in, anything January 2020 got slammed, as we know. But Jason, you had pointed out that as a legislature, we really should be able to articulate kind of our vision and big picture priorities. So seems to me the opportunity to spend $20 million with relatively few strings attached, not no strings, but relatively few strings attached, is an opportunity for us to think about our values and priorities as a legislature. So I'm interested in hearing from committee members. There's been a ton in the media about the ARP. You've had opportunities to see NACO meetings or whatever also. So if you have any comments or thoughts, first ideas about where you think we might want to direct at least some of this money. And I think it's important to know we could put pieces of it in different places. We don't have to decide that it all goes into one priority. Is another way to look at it. So committee members, any kind of first thoughts? Henry, go ahead.
Yes, I know that this has come up before, like last year where the city did its budget and they put it online to get comments. And I was looking at some information. I noticed that the city of Rochester is also getting ARP funding, and they're holding a public, that I guess they're required to have a public forums, but they're also doing it based on their strategic plan. And they have guidelines for questions and everything else to basically get the public's viewpoint of how the funds should be spent. I know the DC public school system is also doing the same thing. They're doing a public survey. And so I wonder whether, in fact, we should, in fact, adopt something like that, having a community forum or having some kind of public input into how we should spend the funding, because it is stimulus funding. It is funding that the whole community gets. And so perhaps we should, in fact, let the community tell us how we should spend the funding, with the options of lowering the debt too. But again, that's my thought.
Thank you, Henry. We have done that sort of thing in the past, had road shows out about our budget process. We've stopped doing that in the last few years. So thanks for that thought. Shauna?
Yeah, I think Henry makes some good points about having community engagement. I think my big concern is that we don't want to make this like the Hunger Games. And yes, we are getting a lot of money from the government. However, we really need to make sure that we use that money as an investment in our community and in our government. And once it's gone, it's gone. And I think that at the end of 3 years, I really want to have something to show for that funding. I see it really as an investment into our community. And if we're putting $1 in, how much are we going to receive back? Is the investment that we're making really going to help our economy? I think right now, a lot of the nonprofits have stepped up and helped the people that really need it. But I also want to make sure that that we're not providing an overabundance, and I they're also receiving CARES funding and other funding too. So it's going to be difficult to figure out what's going to be fair for nonprofits, for tourism people. I think it's going to be really hard, trying to help our community and figuring this out.
Totally. I agree with this is a complicated issue, and I think there is urgency to really doing something strategic and thoughtful, and something that will pay back in whatever way. I know, Mike Sigler, you and I had a conversation the other day. Do you have something to add on this?
Yeah, no, I raised my hand. It's hard to do that here, but
yeah, I couldn't see you. I thought you maybe did. Okay.
Yeah, listen, my goal is to roll this money out as quickly as humanly possible. I mean, I look at this as what it's called. It's called the Rescue Fund, and I think some of our agencies and some of our not-for-profits are in need of rescue, and that's. I understand people say, "Oh, we want to put this toward a larger vision." My larger vision is to preserve what we might lose because of the pandemic. I mean, a lot of these agencies and not-for-profits, they were closed. I mean, they literally couldn't do business. And it's like the Hangar Theater. I mean, they literally couldn't have shows. And I don't know what their needs are, but I would like to know what those needs are. And I'm not as concerned, I guess, about, oh, we're going to spend an extra 10,000 here or an extra 10,000 there on some particular agency. I think we're going to know who's trying to game the system. I don't think that actually is going to happen that much, to be honest with you. So my goal is to get this money in hand as quickly as possible, and to get it out the door as quickly as possible to those in need, basically. So while I appreciate what Henry is saying, where he's saying, he wants to get community input, I kind of feel like that's our job. I mean, we are the community. We represent communities, and that's who we're talking to. So I think we have a good sense. I mean, Jennifer's on the line. She clearly has a good idea for who's in need from the chamber. Kelly's here, she knows. SDPB, Greg, I think we have a good sense. We have the mechanisms on how to get money out the door. And I understand what Sean is saying about Hunger Games. Obviously, none of us want that, but I mean, there should be maybe an application process, just like we do with STP funding. I mean, people apply and then we have a board that looks over it. This isn't our first rodeo with how to hand out money. I would like to see a much faster process though than, well, what are we thinking about 3 years from now? I'm thinking 3 months from now or 3 weeks from now. How do we literally get this money out the door? And then I have faith that the people we're giving it to and the agencies will spend it wisely. I mean, some people like the hospital, I get it. They're getting money from a lot of different places, but their risk was pretty high. I mean, their testing alone was like $5,000 out of pocket. I want to know from a hospital that they were made whole. And if they weren't, that's kind of what this money I thought was supposed to be directed to from the federal government. So, and how to make them whole so that we're prepared for the next emergency on that end of things. But also, listen, it's the hangar, it's the kitchens. That's what makes up your arts community. Not just the hangar, it's that group. How is that group doing? What do they need? And that's what I look to Kelly for and to Jennifer for. I mean, there were companies when the shutdown happened, I was talking to one of Jennifer's members about flowers. And she said when Cornell shut down, that was 80% of her business just left. And I was like, how are you going to stay afloat? And she's like, I don't really know, actually, at that particular meeting. And I hope that they have. I don't know what has happened to them. But I can only imagine that the agencies are in the same predicament. So I don't know. That's my not 2 cents on it. That's my $20 million on it. Is how do we get that $20 million out the door? So.
Thank you, Mike. Annie, and then I'll make a comment, and then we should probably move on. Make a plan for how to proceed, and then move on. Go ahead, Annie.
Thanks, Martha. I had a conversation the other day with the Hangar Theater director and about how they're going to be moving forward and having their venues outside, but only the performers and the equipment covered. And so they're really going to be weather dependent each day. And so, I mean, I understand a little bit, of some of the challenges out there. I think, of course, the tourism industry is really important for the community. And so that's definitely a place we need to look at helping. We also, of course, as people already said, county services, nonprofits. And I also agree with, seeing how quickly we can get the community involved. The only thing I want to add that I haven't heard people say directly is I want to make sure that we always keep a lens of the communities and workers who are often underserved and making sure we're looking at equitable distribution in this. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Annie. And that brings to mind, there's the whole question of special flexibility when it comes to serving qualified census tracts for childcare, healthcare services, other things. We do have several qualified census tracts. So I hear a lot of mixed thoughts here. This is almost a blank slate. It's like this never happens, right? This never happens to local government to have $20 million and almost a blank slate. So I really agree about the urgency too. I don't feel like the idea was to put this into the 2022 budget, which means the money doesn't actually do anything until January. So maybe some of it, I think some of it, we can certainly think about dividing and conquering here. Would this committee be willing to do a special meeting, say in 2 weeks, like just to focus on this? Because this is really critical, and I think timing is important. Would committee members be willing to like we'll find a meeting time in 2 weeks? No to Shauna. Henry, yes says yes. Mike Sigler, I can't see. That's a yes.
I would want to talk with the budget committee first, if that even makes sense, you know.
I think this is more of a budget issue.
Overall time, you know, rather than just this committee spearheading it possibly.
Oh, I don't mean just this committee. I think the whole legislature needs to be involved in the whole community. But and as far as budget, they have to be dealing with county administrator search and county attorney search. So I'm worried about, you know, things getting done. Sean, really quickly, did you want to add? You already said something. Was there anything else?
Yeah, I just think this is more of a budget issue, and I even a joint meeting, I think would be fine, but I think this is specific to budget.
Mike?
This isn't a counter to that. I guess the question I have for the legislature, we outlaid from savings to shore up our budget. Is it the intention of the majority of the legislature that, and this would be for budget, I don't think this whole amount of money is for budget. I think this section is though. Do we intend to bring our fund balance back to where it was, which would be X amount of dollars? Are we even allowed to do that? I don't know. But is that our intention? Or was our fund balance so big at the point, and this is a question for Rick, we didn't go below a certain level, so our rating wasn't harmed, I don't believe. But do we need to bring it back to attain that same awesome rating that we had?
All right, one sentence answer, Rick. And Rick.
One sentence, easily done. It'll be harder to justify any grant revenue coming in based on analysis of fund balance because your fund balance grew. It's bigger at the end of last year.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Good one sentence. Rich, John, and then we got to move on. Rich,
I just want to clarify, you cannot put this in your fund balance.
Right,
This is
right.
not a fund balance issue.
Okay.
And just to speak to the bigger issue, you have to have this conversation with the legislature as a whole. This has to be a legislature-driven conversation as to how you're going to set this
Absolutely.
priority. This is not something that should be done, and it should be, the legislature should be how the legislature as a whole wants to go about this process. You have to have that conversation with the legislature as a whole.
Absolutely, but then, nobody's doing it yet. So we just started this conversation. I was just asking if people had the appetite to set aside some extra time. Maybe it's a full legislature meeting. I don't know. I'll talk to Leslie, but
Why don't we bring it up at the legislature meeting Tuesday?
okay,
That's only a couple days away.
sure. But again, we have a lot of other business in all of our other meetings. I think this kind of needs its own, I didn't think about this till now. I think this needs some really dedicated time with as much information as possible. I also want to point out, nobody should be thinking that we can just fund everything. Nobody should be thinking this is ongoing money. Everybody in the community or whoever knows this is one time. The other thing is about fund balance is that we have, to the extent that we have fund balance, we can use that to backfill certain things while ARP money can go to other things. It's just, they're both one-time money. That's kind of the idea. Rich, and then I swear we're going to go to Katie for the commissioner's report, or Megan, whoever's here. Go ahead, Rich.
Thanks. I was just going to say this does seem to cry out for us to address this issue of strategic planning. This is such a big decision and it impacts so many different directions. I've thought we've needed this strategic planning effort for a very long time on a lot of different levels. This is certainly one of them. Thanks for letting me talk.
You bet. But we're going to have to do it really fast. So whatever we do, I agree with the sense of urgency. Okay, thank you all very, very much. Good discussion. Katie Bergella or Megan? Go ahead, Katie. Welcome. Hi.
Hi, everybody. I will be super fast. A few things on the Community Development Housing Fund, Community Housing Development Fund, got it backwards. The town of Ithaca formally became an associate member, joining the town of Dryden as our new associate members for the group. Wanted to let you know that Founders Way, INHS's project, also called the Immaculate Conception School, received its building permits and work has begun on that project. That was funded partly by the Housing Fund. Another Housing Fund awardee, Carpenter Park Apartments, was the only 9% low income housing tax credit project in Tompkins County from the most recent award. And we do expect there'll be an additional tax credit round this year. So hopefully we'll have more successes in our community. And just to let everyone know that this past Monday, Megan joined Jeremy Thomas and Kate Supran from Cornell, and they gave a presentation on the Housing Fund at the International Town and Gown Association, which unfortunately was not international, it was virtual, so they didn't get to go anywhere fun, but they did a great job and had a good response to the presentation. And that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Katie. And Megan, congratulations. That's wonderful. Quickly, any questions for Katie on those items? Okay, great to hear that we think there might be another housing tax credit round. Thank you, Katie. Megan, welcome, and thanks. I know we have a bit of business under your portfolio. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, primarily I'm here today with a resolution to move forward executing the new memorandum of understanding to continue the Community Housing Development Fund with Cornell University and the city of Ithaca as our two other major funding partners. I'll say associate members just enter into fiscal agreements with the county. So that's why only kind of full members are party to this MOU, although we'll always welcome a fourth, fifth, and sixth members down the way if we ever have anyone interested. I think there are just a few main points that the memo in your packet covers, all of the highlights, but the source of funds that you've used for the past two MOU agreements to fund the county's contribution to this program are HUD program income funds. And they're a little unpredictable. They are generated through the repayment of loans from first-time home buyers that are from grant programs before we went to using the state instead of going to HUD directly. So they're a little hard to predict in terms of payments because sometimes people are delinquent for a while. We've had people go on pause for a bit during the pandemic, things like that. But I'm happy to report that it looks like there's a very good chance that we should have enough HUD program income funds coming in over these 6 years to fund the full $600,000. But just to make you aware, there is a slim possibility that if something kind of catastrophic happened with a number of those loans, there might be a need for some local dollars instead. Thankfully, we have the state county law amended now so that that is possible should it ever be needed, although we're hoping that that won't be the case. I'll mention also that, starting in this year's budget, you all had approved the county taking a small 5% administration fee when it uses those HUD program income funds. You can use up to 18% for program administration and delivery, but just a small fee knowing how much staff resources are going into that program. In here as well, you'll see that there is a request that the county provide timing flexibility, which the other partners cannot since they're using their annual budget processes. And that way, because we know development projects, we can have a glut of projects and then we can have a real slow period. So if we see a lot of excellent projects come in 1 year and have more demand than the program can support, the county may be asked to authorize use of some of its kind of later year funds, moving them up. So not going over that $600,000 cap, but maybe just advancing. So you might see more than $100,000 in requests in a given year. We track all those funds to make sure you're not contributing more than the MOU calls for. And then finally, I'll note that this happened in late 2019, where the partners saw that we had an extraordinary slate of projects and more demand than the remaining funds could support. So all three partners decided to make an increase and amend the MOU in that way. Right now, development is highly unpredictable. So we don't see a demand for more than that at this moment. But if that changes in the future, as we get further out from the pandemic, I think all of the partners are interested in that conversation. I know the city specifically has said that it would entertain more than $100,000 contribution per year if it became really necessary.
Thank you so much, Megan. Good summary of what's going on with the housing fund, and of course with the IDA's policy on affordable housing. We are expecting to see some very significant contributions from some of the projects that will spin off fees to the housing fund, probably starting in 2023. So that might help the public sector quite a bit. First, are there any questions for Megan, or should we just get the resolution on the floor? Okay, so we got packet page 20, resolution document I-10098. Can I get a motion by somebody? Moved by Sean, a second by Annie. Authorization to enter into an agreement with the City of Ithaca and Cornell University to continue to fund and administer the Community Housing Development Fund. So that's on the floor. Any discussion? Well, I want to make sure I acknowledge the work that went into revising the MOU. As you can see in your packet, it's dense, it's very thoughtful, it's a legal document, and it didn't get born by accident. A lot of hard work by Megan, Ann Koreman, Jared Pittman from Cornell, and Nels Bone from IURA. Went into going line by line and really tweaking the language, making sure it expressed the goals of the Program Oversight Committee and making sure it did what we wanted it to do. So thank you all very much for all of that really hard work. So this is a pretty big milestone to be able to start another 6 years with the Housing Fund. Been so successful in producing, in supporting 810 housing units over the years so far, and much more good stuff ahead. So no other discussion or questions? Mike Sigler.
I just have two questions. So it's about 400 have been brought online already, about 400 in the hopper on this. I was curious, and I should have asked this, I'm sorry, Katie, that I'm wondering how that compares to how many units have actually been built in the county, just how many units have been built overall, and see what kind of percentage that is out of the total number of units. I don't need that now, obviously. Number two was, have Cornell and the City of Ithaca both signed off on this? Like, are they both on board again?
Sure. I guess I'll work from last to first.
Sorry.
Yep, no problem. So the city actually in May just authorized executing the MOU itself. So it's gone through Common Council. So the city's on board, and Cornell is kind of working through its internal administrative processes, but they don't anticipate any problem with this. So I think we're delighted because this will help us announce a fall rounds of funding when it's usually tax credit season. So that'll keep us rolling. Where developers know that can keep planning their projects. In terms of I can't give you the exact percentage of units. I will say since the program rolled out in 2009, I think the only formally affordable developments that have been built without Community Housing Development Fund involvement are through Conifer, so Poets Landing, and I think some of the projects on one of their projects on West Hill. And most recently, Art House is going forward without our funding, and that we did talk with them. It came down to a timing issue for them because the 4% tax credits they were using have a shorter affordability period than our program, so they decided they didn't want our longer affordability term. And in terms of our funding leverage, I think we're averaging about 2% of a project, which is very low. That is mostly due to the tax credit projects since they're larger and leverage so many resources. When it comes to for sale units, we are a much, much higher proportion in the project because they don't have a lot of subsidy options.
Okay,
And
thanks.
I would just add, Mike, that we've been trying to annually do what we call the housing snapshot, which we bring to this committee late summer, early fall, where we look at the overall housing situation and what has been built in the community.
Great. Yeah, I remember you did that last year. So, okay, great. I'll look forward to it. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, the real beauty of this program is that with a relatively small amount of local dollars, we're able to really bump up the scores that our competitive projects get when they're evaluated for the housing, for the tax credits. The tax credit grants are hugely competitive. Our projects locally have been able to get like at least one per round and often two per round in large part. And we're told by the staff at the state that our local money is a big statement. So it really punches above its weight, I think, dollar per dollar. So anything else on this? Okay, then let us vote. Shauna Black,
Yes.
Ann Koreman,
Yes.
Henry Granison,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
and I'm happily a yes. Thank you all so very much for getting this done. It's a big, big deal. All right, that's unanimous. And we're almost on track with time. Not quite, but almost. Thanks, Megan. Thank you, Katie. Nick, where's Nick? Is Nick here? I know I saw his name. Hi, Nick.
Hello.
Thank you for your report in the packet. Would you like us at packet page 32 and 33, 34? Would you like to give us a couple of highlights?
Sure, I can just kind of speak to some of the important pieces here where we're at on the tourism program. There's really just almost too much to summarize in terms of what's changed at the state level since the last report, in terms of things relating to quarantines and vaccination and masks and everything else, as you all are all well aware of. So I think that, in general, that's painting a positive picture on the demand side for tourism, as people are, planning more travel in the coming weeks and months, and myself included. So yeah, so I think that's generally, there's a lot of good news, and I did want to make sure that folks were aware of that. I think a year ago it was a much different story, and it has been a welcome turn of events for us to see that this is changing. I'll say, at the last STPB meeting in May, here we had a long discussion regarding workforce, and we've already talked about that a bit here as an issue that's affecting many different employers in this sector, restaurants, hotels, entertainment. Everybody seems to be having a challenge in this. So that's to that point, the board voted to work with the city and our economic development partners here to find out what options we can potentially propose to help that situation before it really starts to impact our economy here locally. So that's something that's definitely on our plate as an issue that we're looking at. Other STPB news, we have a draft budget. It's posted to the website, and as you have already, I think, heard in the budget retreat, it includes the ARP funding, and you can see in that memo describes basically how that funding balances with room tax to bring us back to roughly our original 2020 pre-COVID budget as a baseline. One new item in that budget.
2020 for 2022, though.
Correct. This is the 2022 budget. Yeah.
Okay.
So, one new item in that budget is a outdoor recreation organizational development grant. You could think of this as sort of ACOD for outdoor rec. The exact specifics of this program have not yet been hammered out. There's a committee that will be looking into that over the next few months, and STPB will review all of the guidelines before anything is released. But the general idea here is to really play to our strengths as a destination, that we know visitors are coming here for our trails and waterfalls and outdoor opportunities, and to help those organizations that are involved most in that sector really thrive and succeed in what they do. So that's forthcoming. There'll be more on that in the coming months. On the room tax front, we're basically on track, I'll say, from what we know. First quarter numbers are in the report, and you can see that we've collected about $251,000. That's a little above where we had estimated we would come in for the 2021 budget. However, the catch is that a lot of that is coming in as late payments. So there's still a bit of a delinquency lagging payment problem that's hanging out there. One tactic we're using to address that and working with finance department is to which we weren't doing last year, is to inform the hotels that are delinquent by 2 quarters or more that failure to pay up or to establish a satisfactory payment plan will result in their removal as a bona fide lodging property. What that means is that the county instructs the CVB to remove that hotel from its list of properties that are promoted in various means. It's something we've had on our agreement with the CVB since the beginning, probably close to the beginning. It's not uncommon, that somebody who's not playing by the rules doesn't get to, benefit from the programs that are being funded by this. So that's sort of the highlights. You can see in the rest report there where we're tracking. Happy to answer any questions the committee has.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions or comments from legislators? I do have something I heard, it must have been on PBS. They were reviewing what where the federal aid has gone and what programs are still have money left, et cetera. And there was the federal, I think it was can't remember which federal bill, the restaurant assistance, specifically aid to restaurants. About 26 billion was available. I guess they recently opened the portal for requests, and they have 3 times that amount in requests. So, PPP is almost used up, but this federal restaurant bill there's already 3 times more. Jennifer writes, PPP is gone. Okay. And that's, I think, what was really keeping so many profits and nonprofits afloat. So the restaurant support is going to be really going to go to 1 in 3 applicants. And I also like had an epiphany, the restaurants and hotels don't get any of our tourism money. They're proprietary businesses, and, the whole tourism program is for the product and for marketing and for the actual nonprofits, basically, and the artists, the venues, et cetera. So those are some of the things that I've been thinking about in this whole arena. If there are no other questions or comments for Nick.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Henry, sorry.
Yes, Nick, I noticed you put in chat that the latest job report showed the leisure hospitality sector was down 800 jobs. Do you know when that report came out? Do you also know how many total jobs are in that sector?
Yeah, round numbers, it's around 3,000. I can get the exact report. This was a report I saw about the beginning of this month, and Natalie from a workforce development board shared it with me. I believe that was looking at like year over year, and that may have been as recent as December. I'll have to double check the number. That's, and the leisure and hospitality includes hotels and restaurants as well. So you're getting both those pieces in there. Give me a moment. I can dig up my reference here.
For more than 25%.
Yeah.
That means the jobs are available and open, but not filled, or they're not available.
That means those employees, there's no longer employees in those positions.
Got it. Okay. All right, Nick, you'll have to get back to us
I'll
with that.
I'll share that with you through email so you can see where.
Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. Thanks a million, Nick. Appreciate it. And sorry we
Thank you.
more time today.
Totally fine.
I do see Heather McDaniel on the board here. Where's Heather? Our next item is IAED and their report. Hi, Heather. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
So there's a report in the package, a couple of pages, and you are make a presentation, right?
Yes, so I will hold any questions if anyone has any for our report in the packet for the end of my time here. I will try and keep it short. I'm going to spend most of my time giving an overview of the Tompkins County Economic Recovery Strategy. So I'm just going to bring up my presentation on the screen here.
While you do that, one other thought, just a second, one other thought about the timing of these things back to the leisure, summer is our big season, is that right, Nick? And when we think about hiring people, this is really the main season for tourism.
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, the second and third quarters of our year are really the peak of demand.
Okay, thank you. All right, Heather, go ahead.
Hey, as the Economic Development Organization for Tompkins County, Ithaca Area Economic Development led a process to develop the Tompkins County Economic Recovery Strategy. It's an action plan to position Tompkins County for success as the economy recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. And not
Heather,
only...
Excuse me, can you go to presentation mode or whichever this is? We're seeing like...
Are you seeing something different?
We're seeing 2 sets of slides and slides across the whole bottom.
Sorry.
That's close, that's closer.
Better?
If you just click the swap displays up in the top left, that should work. Sorry, it's once it was airing.
No, click on slideshow. Yeah.
Yeah. It was better the other
Hang
way.
on. How's that? Is
There
that
you
better?
go. Beautiful. Thank you.
I'm seeing the opposite of what you're seeing, so this is going to be fun. Okay, so as I was saying, it's really an action plan to position our county for success as the economy recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I would say that not only recover, but grow and move forward as well. Here are our implementation partners. This is not an IAED strategy. This is a countywide strategy, and working together, we'll all be working together on actions that will have a lasting positive impact on our economy. We're looking to increase job opportunities and increase sources of municipal revenue, increase property tax, hotel occupancy tax, and sales tax. So you see on this slide the outline for the recovery strategy, or the content, so to speak. I'm not going to go through every single thing in the strategy, but give a high level overview. The first thing in the strategy is economic impacts. Through all of our partners, we have compiled and tracked data that captures the extent of the impacts of the pandemic over the course of the past year, which I will be sharing that entire strategy with you. We've tracked unemployment, labor force participation, pedestrian traffic downtown, transportation declines, as well as room tax and sales tax. Overall, what we're seeing is, steep 50% plus declines in many economic indicators. So we have a bit of a hole to climb out of. We do identify challenges and opportunities. These were identified through a variety of stakeholder meetings throughout the course of the pandemic. The big piece of the strategy is the 3 phases of recovery. The first 2 phases we've already moved out of and into phase 3. So I won't spend a lot of time, but the first phase, the full strategy identifies a range of actions that were taken to mobilize partners and resources to provide immediate assistance to affected businesses in the first 3 to 6 months of the pandemic. Just as an example of some of those actions, there were 2 new loan programs that we developed through our partnership networks that together through those 2 programs, we were able to raise and mobilize over $710,000 to support 122 businesses. That was in the first 3 months. Some of those businesses say that they're in business today because of the swift actions of our partners. In phase 2, stabilization. As the economy started to open back up last year, our recovery strategy really recognizes significant actions that were taken to stabilize at-risk businesses and save jobs. Another $450,000 was raised locally and supported 23 more businesses. Over 184 businesses received customized support just from the Small Business Development Center. In addition to a number of our partners working together to compile a number of resource guides for businesses and providing consistent and frequent information to businesses as things were changing very quickly as the economy started to reopen. Also providing consumer confidence messaging in a variety of venues.
Heather, excuse me, I really hate to do this, but unless the committee can go longer, I think, we spent a lot of time in the beginning on a discussion of the American Rescue Plan that we didn't plan for. If you can move quickly through the slides.
I've just got a couple more slides.
Okay.
I'm not slide heavy today, and I've got myself down to less than 15 minutes. So
okay.
Moving through, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to present the work of all of our professional partners over the last several months. And I really can't say enough about all of the partners and their work to respond to the crisis last year. Other duties as assigned became our motto. And as a result of all of these actions really did help to stabilize our economy. And the strategy does really highlight those actions. So now I really want to turn to phase 3 and the recovery, and that's now and into the future. This year and over the next 2 to 3 years, we shift really to focus on actions that support redevelopment, revitalization, and growth, ensuring prosperity as our economy recovers. So that phase 3, that redevelopment and revitalization phase, we're looking at this recovery strategy really as a companion document to the countywide economic development strategy. We've focused it in the same focus areas, targeted sectors, workforce, and infrastructure as a companion piece really to the economic development strategy. Focusing on new challenges, new opportunities, and new actions as a result of the pandemic. So traditionally, economic development efforts really focus on what we call traded sectors. They sell products or services outside the county, they bring wealth into the county. Manufacturing, education, healthcare. They provide long-term quality employment opportunities and increase the tax base. Focusing on those traded sectors, and that's what you see in the countywide economic development strategy, really drives the need for all the other local, captive to the local market kinds of businesses. The COVID-19 pandemic put tremendous strain on those local businesses. And some of those sectors have been elevated in focus as targeted sectors in this recovery strategy. And then in terms of workforce, the pandemic labor market study by the Workforce Development Board is just finishing up. I have a hot off the presses copy. I think Natalie will be distributing them when she returns from her much needed vacation next week. That strategy has identified the new realities of the labor market and identified new in-demand jobs to focus training and attraction efforts. On the infrastructure side, our economic development strategy has always focused on key infrastructure investment and projects. We've identified new actions as a result, again, of those challenges and opportunities that have been brought about by the pandemic. So let's talk about a little bit about the targeted sectors that we've identified in the recovery strategy. Local businesses were the most vulnerable and the most impacted because they are captive to a local market that was really forced to quarantine. Recovery efforts that are outlined in the strategy really focus on financial and technical assistance to this sector. In terms of tourism and hospitality, the Strategic Tourism Planning Board and the CVB and other partners are developing a more longer-term strategy that would be incorporated within the recovery strategy. This strategy right now incorporates actions, really short-term actions, to support items that will increase room tax and increase sales tax in the near term. Short-term actions focused on those traditional, what we call drive-to markets, the 5 to 6 hour travel radius, that those are the traditional visitors that we're already seeing come back. So focusing real efforts on visitor experience there. The office market has really been shaken up as a result of COVID. And again, local business, tourism, hospitality, office market, not so much considered our traded sectors, wouldn't be a focus in our countywide economic development strategy. We've elevated them to targeted sectors here because they really need more focus over the next couple of years if we're going to increase sales tax and occupancy tax, not only back to pre-pandemic levels, but to grow them. The office market has been decimated. We're hearing at the national level that this market may not rebound until after 2025. So our strategy is trying to focus actions on recruiting new office tenants, as well as repurposing newly created vacant office spaces for other kinds of uses, small scale manufacturing, residential, and other commercial uses. We continue to focus on manufacturing, R&D, and high tech because there are new realities as a result of the pandemic to these industries. We're really focusing on supply chain development, reshoring supply chain, diversifying this existing base to our economy, and adapting and helping companies to adapt to technology and improve production processes and better streamline their processes to increase revenue and increase jobs. Workforce development is central to our recovery. Low wage, entry-level workers were the most heavily impacted, and our actions really focus on closing the skills gaps for the new in-demand open jobs of today and what we project to be tomorrow's workforce, and assisting businesses to fill some of the more high-skilled positions that are critical to keeping businesses open and operating here. And again, that workforce strategy will be incorporated into the recovery strategy. In terms of infrastructure, downtown Ithaca is a key area to support for recovery. A thriving downtown is essential to retain and attract business, workforce, and investment. A vibrant downtown contributes to a high quality of life, anchors arts and culture, and is a must-have for visitors as a jumping off point to all the other wonderful things in our county and beyond. It is our selling point to attract, people to live, work, and play here. In addition to focusing on downtown, there are some transportation actions in the strategy that really focus on last mile improvements and getting people into short trips of transportation that get them to work but out of their cars, other modes of transportation. In terms of key development and redevelopment sites in the strategy, we've identified a couple of key areas that we think if they are able to attract investment, or if we're able to prime those sites for additional investment, it will grow tax base, increase job opportunities, increase housing opportunities as well. And we all know how the broadband situation has been exacerbated by COVID. There's some concrete actions in our recovery strategy around providing leadership to develop strategies for more broadband and to provide that last mile service in Tompkins County. The professional stakeholders and all of the partner organizations have developed this strategy through several conversations, several meetings, really to position our county for success in the future. There's a whole host of actions under each of these different areas in the recovery strategy. What we've also done is, I want you to know through the partners, we're implementing some of these actions today. Some are ready to go. Some can be ready to go in 30 to 60 days. Some are more longer term actions. So this is really a plan for a period of time, not just for today. We have identified in our strategy short-term initiatives and the cost of some of those initiatives. These are not all the initiatives in the strategy. These are the initiatives that have not been funded, but in the immediate term, if they were to be funded, and we're all looking for funding sources at the local, the state, the federal level to fill some of these gaps in these projects. If these were to be funded, they would go a long way towards supporting recovery in our economy. We've also got a list of longer term initiatives and some initial price tags on those that all of the partners will be working on to develop over the next couple of years. And again, looking for ways to fund all of those projects. So with that, I hope I've been brief enough. It was an incredible journey this past year. I want to thank you for the opportunity to do this work in this community, and thank you from all of our partners for the tremendous work that's been done here on this recovery strategy. And we're looking forward to the future.
Thank you so much, Heather. That was a quick run through, as you said. And I assume we can get all these slides and we'll send them out to the full legislature. This is really, really a very thoughtful and important starting point for all of us. Thank you.
I will send out the slides. I will also send out the full strategy as we've designed it.
Great, thank you. Henry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a quick question, Heather. What's SBDC at Binghamton University?
That's the Small Business Administration, the federal government's SBA's Small Business Development Center. It's based out of Binghamton. They have a full-time technical assistance advisor here in the Ithaca market, and they've added some additional part-time assistants here in Ithaca as well.
Thank you.
Annie?
Thank you. Thank you, Heather, for the presentation and all the work that went behind it, especially. So here in Trumansburg, we have a little microcosm of, a little microeconomic area. And so I'm just wondering if those areas, that are outside of Ithaca are going to be something that's going to be addressed in the near future?
The Tompkins County Economic Recovery Strategy has actions and initiatives that will support businesses all over Tompkins County. As an example, one of the actions is the Chamber of Commerce is partnering with the county to develop a micro enterprise program that will provide technical assistance and financial supports to targeted small businesses all over the county.
Thank you.
And we're going to go to Jennifer and Peggy Coleman in a minute. But as I got a quick glance at the slides there, and I think, you know, the city of Ithaca is our county seat. So there's a lot of heft to that recovery. The city of Ithaca is getting 17.8 or something million in American Rescue Plan funds. The IURA is also getting an additional 1.2 million, as I understand. So I assume, like your list of projects, you'll probably have at least 2 audiences for that list. Is that what I would guess?
There will be several audiences for this list. You know, we're talking about working with the Downtown Ithaca Alliance on an office recruitment campaign. Will it just recruit new tenants to downtown? Potentially, it could recruit tenants to vacant buildings all over the county. You know, trying to focus efforts where the biggest bang for our buck is going to be. Where I have worked over the past 13, 14 years at IAED, we have delivered incentives to businesses and assistance to businesses all over the county. On average, about 1/3 of our projects through our direct services are downtown Ithaca. I think about 1/3 of the population in Tompkins County is in the city of Ithaca. So, you know, we try and serve the entire county, and we understand that, you know, as we create initiatives, the more we can be inclusive and support the entire county, the better off we're going to be. There will be lots of different audiences for each and every one of these funding opportunities.
Thank you very much. This also suggests that we should make a concerted effort to talk to the city of Ithaca as well. I mean, every municipality is getting funding through ARP relative to their population. So we'll make sure to be in touch with the city on a formal.
And we've got a plan through all of our partners to put the county back on a footing that grows our economy, not only back to where it was, but to increase revenues for municipal governments and for the county over the long term. Small investments today will pay off in terms of increased tax base in the future.
All right, that's keep our eyes on the prize. Thank you so much, Heather. And
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being, you know, such a connector and bringing people together. To go to one of these key partners, and I must say, as I look back over the previous 14, 15 months, the Chamber and IAED both did such an amazing job of making sure businesses knew what was out there, how they could get federal help, how they could connect to PPP, et cetera. And, you know, at county government, we could not have possibly kept up with the constantly changing information that you all did, couldn't have kept up with communicating that to our businesses. And we really, really appreciate all that you did. So I'm going to let's turn it over to Peggy Coleman from the Convention and Visitors Bureau with a plea to really assume that we've read what's in our packet and try to go quickly, you know, so that we have time for questions and conversation, because we still are about 10 minutes behind on our schedule. So thank you. Welcome. Whichever one of you wants to go first. Peggy?
Sure, I'm happy to. And I'm happy to say that it is often my role to condense and save time. So happy to try to get you back on schedule. It's hard to collapse an entire year into, let's say, 7 minutes, but I'll do my best. I don't need to reiterate, 2020 was absolutely ridiculous and devastating to the tourism economy. Our team and our annual report is in your packet. I'm not going to share my screen. We messaged thoughtfully to protect our community. 2020 began as another banner year, and then March 6th, while the state closed on March 18th, our community and the tourism economy started feeling the impact on March 6th, when international visitors were not allowed to come on campuses. Quickly, we lost a lot of revenue and a lot of jobs in a hurry. However, we soldiered through, and some of the highlights I just would like to share with you. I'm going to include a link in the chat now that includes an interview that was done by one of our team from the sales department. And just as a reminder, we do not just visitor centers. I think a lot of times people think that the CVB is just, we operate visitor centers, but there's so much more to the work that we do. I'm going to talk about some marketing highlights. In 2020, we really focused on inspirational messaging, especially March through June, encouraging people to remember the places where they feel calm and then return and enjoy our wide open spaces. Our website, we saw pure visitation. While our overall sessions were down in 2020 compared to the previous year, what we saw was the biggest decrease were people going to our events page, and they were predominantly local. So the visitation to visitithaca.com was legitimate, truly pure visitors who were looking to try to plan for future trips to our destination. New York City is still trending upward, even with the less higher educated, higher ed related traffic. And Buffalo and Rochester and surrounding areas are pretty much on par. Our Google search results grew, and organic impressions were up considerably. And again, it goes back to people understanding what our destination has to offer. Through relationship building, we were able to earn considerable media placements. Unfortunately, we didn't have the budget, and we weren't able to host travel writers into the destination. So through leveraging our relationships with a travel writer who was due to come on March 15th of 2020, we were able to push her forward into 2021. And she did come later in October and did a great piece about our destination and sustainable farming and public gardens. And we're continuing to also get some play on our cider experiences as we wove that message into many of our media pitches. One of our fun things, one of our fun PR projects was the collaboration with our community partners on the Wear a Mask video. And there's a link to that video if you want to watch it on your own on page 5 in our report. And it was a fun way to remind people that it's important to keep our community safe. And this was included in many emails sent to our consumers as well as media responses. Our relationship with I Love New York helped us to garner some coverage for many Tompkins County tourism partners. We were featured in, I believe it was 8 different blogs from I Love New York on the I Love New York website. And just as a reminder, because I think many of you either may not know or may not always remember that the listings that are on our website directly feed to the I Love New York website. So it's that important relationship with our local businesses, keeping those listings updated and accurate, that feeds directly to New York State and to other regional sites. As far as the sales department goes, again, we leveraged those relationships. We had a lot of conference business that we had to move, and we didn't want them moving out of Tompkins County. So we reached out to our clients to check in to see how we could help reschedule any meetings or tour bookings into the future, and to genuinely engage with those clients in a meaningful manner, so that they knew we were thinking of them, and with the hopes that they would be thinking of us when they were ready to start traveling. And those relationships absolutely paid off. The Travel Alliance Partners, that is a group of tour operators, they awarded Visit Ithaca the cover of the 2020 TAP Dream Destinations Guide. And that is a tool that those tour operators use all year as a way to market destinations to their clients. One of the TAP members brought a tour in October of last year. There's a photo in the report, and that was our first tour bus. Typically, we start seeing those buses rolling in April. So to see something in October was a great relief, and it was encouraging to see things starting to come back. Of course, the conference center, we've spent a lot of time on. I mentioned about Sarah's interview, that link that I put in the chat. It's exactly from relationship building. Sarah Imes, our tour and travel manager, was interviewed by JTB. They're an international receptive operator for a YouTube video promoting Ithaca as a college town to Japanese clients. And I hope you will take a moment to view that on your own. It's really cool and inspiring. And again, keeping our destination top of mind for when those visitors are able to return to our nation. Of course, the conference center we've been meeting weekly on, sometimes more often than that, to move this project forward. It's moved from an economic development project to a key recovery project for our community. And the conference center is due to open in late summer of 2023. It will have approximately 50,000 square feet of space. It will produce 22,000 new room nights annually, which means more sales tax and room tax to the county, and create 60 new jobs, and is forecasted to produce over $150 million over 20 years. Our visitor experience team, they're our front line, and they have been messaging about safety by email, chat, phone, and also in July of 2020 at our Taganic Falls Visitor Center and the Downtown Visitor Center, both on reduced hours because of our reduced staffing. As a result of the pandemic, we did need to lay off some very valuable team members. So if you can think pre-pandemic, in the beginning of 2020, we had a really successful Ithaca Loves Teachers celebration when we welcomed almost 5,000 teachers who spent about $319,000 over a 10-day period in February. February is traditionally a slow time of year, and it's when we really needed the business. In 2021, we reimagined that Ithaca Loves Teachers celebration. There was more of a local visitation, more New York State and regional visitors. But in 2020, we had teachers and their guests from 6 different states come and spend their money and enjoy our community. I think I mentioned earlier that it truly was a tale of true visitation, as the visitors that we welcomed in our visitor centers literally overlaid exactly to the visitors to visitithaca.com website. When the pandemic began, we had anticipated a phased approach, and that we would first see regional visitors as our state began opening up. But what we learned is that our repeat visitors returned. We were seeing visitors from New York City, northern New Jersey. There are traditional feeder markets. And we also saw new people, new visitors looking to escape those densely populated areas so they could enjoy our wide open spaces and waterfalls. Another important part to our work in 2020 was to—
Excuse me, if I can steer it towards, if you could tell us quickly about, I'm hoping to hear from you about, in the little time we've left, the marketing, how marketing now and, near term, what you're thinking about how to bring people back, because I've heard you talk about this in other meetings. So would you mind talking about what you would like to be doing?
Oh, sure. I'd be delighted to. We experienced a 50% cut in our budget in 2020. In 2021, we're being very cautious because we can't sustain another similar impact mid-year like we did last year. So we have been implementing new platforms as part of the recovery program. We've contracted with a company called Sojourn, who feeds our content to people who have been actively traveling during the pandemic. So they're active travelers, they're not just dreamers. And in the first month, we were able to influence, I would think it was over 600 room nights. I'd have to actually go back and check that. That doesn't sound like a lot, but when our businesses are hurting, every single room is important, right? We're continuing to use PR to help leverage getting the message out. We've been able to garner some really good placements with Forbes and some other media outlets. We'd love to be able to reinvest in paid search in our website. All of the web activity that I've shared with you and that's in the report is organically based. By switching vendors to save on our budget, we were able to improve our performance, especially in organic search, which gets our website and our partner businesses in the eyes of visitors faster and better. We rank higher. And so that's great that we have organic, but when we've got other destinations who have the capacity to invest in paid search, we would love to be able to do that. Our visitor centers, we have Teganic opened April 26th. That will be our focal point. That's where we see the most visitors annually. So Teganic is open 7 days a week. Downtown right now at Tompkins Center in History and Culture is open for Thursday through Saturdays. If we were able to hire additional staff, we would expand those service hours as well. There's a lot of advertising we'd like to be able to do, but they don't like, it's great that we have relationships, but relationships won't pay for those insertions.
All right, so very quickly, you said you had a 50% cut in your 2020 budget. Your 2021 budget, we're in the middle of 2021. What's the number there? Is it the same as what you got in 2020?
No, the 2021 budget that was approved by STPB, we have intentionally operated under a decreased budget. We've reduced $200,000 off that budget internally to prepare in case the forecasts do not meet. And what we're seeing, and Nick, feel free to jump in if you're still here, we're seeing occupancy is increasing, but rate is not. And so, and also keep in mind, during the first 3 months easily of this year, there was a lot more tax exempt business coming to our destination because of the rooms that were being used for higher ed, quarantining, and isolation.
Okay, so in chat, Jennifer, the CVB budget reductions in total equaled $620,000 in 2020 from various funds. And then 2021, are you saying you were level with 2020? That was my question.
No, because our budget in 2020 was originally $1,400,000 or $1,400,000. The approved budget is $1,100,000. And that's assuming all room tax comes through as forecasted.
Okay, your 2021 budget is 1.1 million. The projected 2020 was supposed to be 1 point, you said 6?
Originally, it was 1.4 when we
1.4.
submitted our budget. And
But you actually
then,
got half of that. Okay.
no, because our budget sources come beyond just room tax. So New York State matching grants, for example, were
Got it.
wiped
Okay.
out.
Jennifer, why don't you've unmuted. You want to help us answer this question?
Oh, well, I mean, Peggy knows the budget numbers as well as anyone. I was just clarifying that. So the funded budget for 2021 was still an additional $300,000 below where we started 2020 with, right? So I think Peggy's trying to say is we are to some degree hedging that there may be continued reductions this year that we don't yet know about, right? So we're being extremely cautious. If we could get some additional guarantee that the county is not going to cut our budget beyond what it has been budgeted for in 2021, then we would be able to invest more of that money in some of the initiatives that Peggy just talked about. I think that, am I summarizing what you're saying correctly? Is that a fair summary?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're doing better than the actual that you got in 2020, but still below what you were planned to get in 2020 by 300. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Peggy. Other questions from folks for Peggy before we turn it over to Jennifer. Okay, a lot. We got Henry and then Deborah, if there's no other committee member. Go ahead, Henry.
Yeah, just quickly, Peggy, I'm looking towards like next year, the next 6 months, and how's the demand going for events, for rooms?
With campuses announcing they're coming back to live, that is absolutely a bright light and will improve the forecast for the second half of the year. As far as events are still a tricky thing because, for example, our theaters are having a hard time not just getting staff, but also volunteers. Using the State Theater, for example, a lot of their volunteers are people who are in the high risk categories, and many of them are nervous about coming back. So events are still an unknown. And there are some folks who have fall events who are canceling preemptively for this year and planning for 2022, or still waiting until later in the year to make a decision if they are a go or a hybrid or how they'll manage them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Annie.
Thank you. So Peggy, one of the things that you said was regarding if you had, assurance that there was a certain amount, that the county was, was able to budget. And I wish we could say, right now, but as you know, we're still, we're just initially starting our budget process, but we'll try as best we can. And thank you for the report.
Thank you, Annie. I appreciate that.
All right, I can't see Mike Sigler. Mike, did you have any questions? That looks like a no. Okay, Deborah, and then we're gonna go, and then I really feel badly about the time, so I want to make sure we get to Aloja and Diane Cohen, et cetera, but go ahead, Deborah.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused, Peggy, because as I understood what you said, you were looking for some assurance that we wouldn't cut your budget for 21.
We are in it. Yeah, well, we would love that. Honestly, though, Deborah, I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the situation that the county is in. I mean, if the money is not flowing, the money is not flowing.
Are you talking about STPB funds, or are you talking about direct money out of the county budget?
I'm talking about the room tax that is administered by the county.
Okay. All right. We'll do the best we can for you.
The other thing that we did not mention, but I guess I'm going to, is we also incurred an EIDL loan of $100,000 to maintain our contract with the county last year to provide marketing work. And so that is something that we are also going to need to repay. And so thankfully it's a lower interest loan, but that is something that will be impacting our budget moving forward from this year as well.
Okay, just remembering that last year everybody was cut in the middle of the year. So this is a sort of PTSD, if I would guess in a phrase. Jennifer, you're putting good things into the chat. So why don't you verbalize them, because it's hard to read and listen at the same time. Go ahead.
Oh, I suppose I was just, and I think I might have only sent that to you, Martha.
Oh, okay.
I think one of the things just maybe worth considering, and again, I know it's not just this committee and it's going to be all of the legislators, and I know it's not just our organization, but I think as, looking at the recovery funds, there are many ways in which the current year budget, we can prevent further impacts and we can speed up economic recovery impacts by investing in the current year budget, or making sure we don't have gaps in the current year budget, and potentially helping to compensate for debts that were incurred, right, to manage the huge funding cuts from last year's budget, versus pushing those investments into 2022, right? There's just I think an open question in terms of philosophy of how quickly can those monies get out on the street and do the most to support our economic recovery and the organizations that are doing that work, and also to support the businesses, the workforce, all of those other things we've already talked about. So I don't want to belabor the point. I think there's a very strong argument to be made that there are some quick ways to invest some of those dollars that will have a big ROI and will support the county's strategic goals around economic development, around supporting the workforce, around, equity and all those other things. And I hope we can think creatively and strategically about those things. So thanks.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate that. While you're there, why don't you talk a little bit about your CDBG grant, your micro enterprise grant? We've got a page in our packets as well.
Well, thank you, and we appreciate the time. I know we'd love a half hour and we don't have it, and that's fine. So I won't keep you, but the memo is only a page long. I'm assuming you've all read it, or you can read it. So I don't need to say much about it other than things are moving forward very well. I'm not sure whether there's any reason to be concerned at this point, whether this grant application will be approved. I've not seen something get to this stage and be declined, but who knows? It's New York State, things can happen. The pre-submission was submitted. It was turned back to me within about 16 hours. It took us a few more weeks to get the final application together. The full app was submitted on May 7th. I've answered some additional questions and updated some documents since then. And I believe the staff will be bringing it to the board at the state at OCR sometime in the next few weeks. And the one key update I think that you might be interested in is when I submitted the application, a change that I made was to seek eligibility for the entrepreneurial training program for both the Tompkins Cortland Community College training program that we worked with their staff to create specifically for this grant initiative, and also to approve the Alternatives and Small Business Development Center RISE program that is a new character-based lending initiative. I'm sure several of you have heard about by now, but that program requires 12 weeks of entrepreneurial training, technical assistance throughout the entire lending process. And so my goal was just to make sure that any of the eligible borrowers that are working through that program might also be eligible grant applicants through this program. And then that might mean that less grant dollars are needed if they're also eligible to borrow money through the Alternatives Initiative. It just helps leverage more funds towards some of those projects. So that's really just a key change. I think it's a positive one. Alternatives was very supportive, helped provide their syllabus information to me in pretty short order. And we'll see how it goes. So if anyone has any questions, happy to do my best to answer them.
Another example of the kind of collaborative work that that folks do here. Thank you so much. Any questions for Jennifer? All right, Peggy, I will just one, if you would put a link to your report separately into the chat, because we have it in the full committee packet. It'd be great to be able to just go right to the report because it's beautiful and I hope people will take a look. So thank you both so very much. If I can ask the committee, can we hang in there for a couple extra minutes so we can really listen to Finger Lakes reuse on this Career Pathways project? I hope we can maintain folks' attention and time for like an extra 5 or 10 minutes. Henry, is that a yes? Okay, Henry, Annie's good. Can't see Mike, so I'm going to say that's a yes. All right, everybody hang in there. Sean, I hope you can.
I have another meeting at 11:30.
Oops, okie doke. All right. All right, well, we're not going to be taking any action, but so stick around as long as you can. Thank you so very much. Lisa, I see before you jump off, is Jason still around? I did not want to like have this meeting end without kind of a little thank you. Maybe he's not on the.
No, Jason had to step off.
Okay, well, just sort of another salute and thank you to Jason for his work with the county for 3 years, this being the last committee meeting that he'll be part of. So we really appreciate his input this morning and his leadership for three and a half years. So if you would express that to him.
I certainly will pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, thanks, Lisa. All right, so looks like we'll at least be able to keep a quorum going. So Robin Elliott, Diane Cohen, Aloja Arroeli, take it away. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone. Robin is going to put some slides and I'm going to, go very quickly. I don't need to give any stories based on the time that you have. I used to think that 1 minute in your committee was 90 seconds, but anyway. My name is Dr. Aloja Arroeli. I am from Cornell Cooperative Extension with the Energy Warriors program, and with me, of course, Diane Cohen and Robin Elliott from Finger Lakes Reuse. The reason we are excited to present this to you is that over the past 1 year, we've been working on this Pathways project. And as you can see, I also want to let you know that we sent a full memo to all of the legislators. So you actually have a lot of the information that we would have shared today with you, but this will be enough for now. These are the community-based organizations that are involved in this coordinated approach to employment in our community. Next slide, please. Next. And what we have found is there's a big disconnect in the sense that there are people looking for jobs, there are employers who want to hire people, but somehow these people seeking jobs have not been able to connect meaningfully with employers, and we have asked ourselves, why is that? Next. The target population we are looking at are the ones listed here. They're usually the hard to employ, underemployed, and people who are just unemployed at this moment. And the pandemic has actually worsened this. So we are focusing on this list of individuals. Next. Next slide, please. And what we have found is that we are not seeking to replace what organizations are already doing. We have come to find that organizations are doing what they do very well, but instead we think that we can bring organizations together to enhance what we are all doing, use the connections of what we have to attract candidates, have an administrative structure that helps to see this process through, and it helps us to focus on the green jobs economy that has become a focus of both the federal, the state, and our city. And thankfully, members of our collaborative network are on the Green New Deal Advisory Board. Next. What will the collaboration look like? It will help us to focus on meaningful recruitment, helping to access the skills of individuals who are in our training programs, and helping us to connect and use a tool that we are terming the employment navigators. And in this process, we have an ability to bring the resources, the efficient system that already exists in all these partner organizations, to actually enhance our ability to connect individuals most meaningfully. Next. So what will a collaboration look like? I want to just focus on those two aspects. What will a collaboration look like? It will mean an individual, for instance, who comes through OAR will be referred through an active recruitment program by an employment navigator that sits in that organization. And using the existing TST BOSI's personal inventory model to define skills, interest, the trainees are able to start on an aspirational pathway. And then we are able to employ that same trainee at the Finger Lakes reuse to start building soft job skills to actually prosper in an employment situation. And then we do enroll the individual in an evidenced research-based training and journaling class. We are using the Root of Success, and which provides a focused formal training about employment. And having identified the individuals and their interest, we are able to put them in such focused areas like heat pump installation training, which is going to become very relevant as we move into the green job areas in the county, in the city, in the next coming years. And then the individual also gets tools from the Tompkins County Workforce Development Center that is part of this collaboration in assessment and help with preparing for jobs, mock interviews. And we are able to use the college initiative upstate model of support to help monitor the progress of the trainees. And also we do want to provide support for the employers and the employees as this process goes on. So from an individual point of view, I've shown you that, but what will it mean for the organizations that are participating? It means that, one, we can help with recruitment. We can also help with sharing information. We can focus resources on people facing barriers. We can provide entry into a spectrum of programming options for these trainees. And I want to go, next slide, next please. I want to go just to the end and not bore you with all the other details. We're already working, we have a number of trainees that have already come through the process. Some of them have been hired by our partner agencies or partner collaborators like CSP Management. Some have gone into the hospitals. How do we get there? This is what I really want to quickly focus on now, and I will let you go about your day. The Pathways Project Working Group has been meeting since the spring of 2020, and what we do, what we are looking for is to be able to grow and continue to grow, then grow faster. But we would like to have this committee look at what we have presented and give us an input. And then we do hope to come to this committee during the budget season to ask for funding for administrative support for this Pathways project and funding for employment navigators at participating organizations. I know that your time is limited, so we won't. I would like to open up for some questions if possible, but thank you for giving us this opportunity to quickly go through what we prepared for you this morning.
All right, thank you so much, Aloja. Appreciate that. Questions from the committee, from other legislators? I know Rich John is on here. He's been working on this initiative as well. Rich, did you want to add anything? Maybe Rich. Okay.
Thank you, Martha. No, I think, Elo just said it. The memo really outlines what this is about. The idea is not to recreate the wheel in any way, that there's really good programming out there, but we don't get volume in them. We don't get enough people attending. Say TST BOCES has great adult ed, but they need a certain number of people in order to form a class. So they just wait. And so you're not getting the people trained in welding. If we could up our recruitment, we would have the ability to do way more. And we could, if we use the community organizations that are doing this in a piecemeal fashion as common recruiters, put them in together, we could slot them into lots and lots of programming because it's there, but they can't find it. And it's also making sure that individuals have those really critical soft job skills of being able to show up on time, work the shift, dressed appropriately. And the program's designed to work on those elements too. So it's the whole package, which makes, I think can really make a difference here in our community.
So a new phrase, employment navigators, is what jumped out at me. Thank you very much, Rich. Annie and then Henry.
Thank you. I'm just gonna follow up too a little bit on what Rich said as far as like this being the whole package. And I when I'm hearing the presentation, I'm seeing like this is like a package that is a piece, of the greater recovery and just economic viability, the equity that we need in our community. So I don't mean to belittle it, but I'm just saying it's a part that obviously we need to help, fund. We need to help in any way we can coordinate with the unions, the colleges. So I am really glad to hear this and look forward to figuring out how we can support you in other ways, not just monetarily, because I think this is a really vital piece, as I often bring up, who's not at the table, and actually, how can we get there? And you guys are doing things that are really tangible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Annie. Henry.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. I was curious of how long the program lasts, and do you have any numbers from the program so far?
So we started using this model to we have had 7 participants in the initial process, and what came out immediately was that we found that with the training, the root of success, which it's actually and now has been federally recognized as an apprenticeship program. We just got that news about 2 weeks ago. We had 5 of the individuals actually came through the apprenticeship program at the reuse, which is amazing because that's where they get to get the soft skills. And one of our partners, CSP Management, hired one of our trainees, which was what we were looking for. We were looking for employers to actually interact with the trainees from the very beginning, and that happened. And we actually, Jerry Dietz was asking me on Saturday, is there more where that came from? And we hope to continue to do that. As I tell you this, it's not as if it's just fun and everything goes smoothly. No, the strength of the collaboration actually is that we are able to learn from our mistakes because we're not limited by the resources of one of the participants. We are able to pull our resources and our knowledge and also the strength of the participants. I just couldn't name all of, the people who are participating. It is a very organic organization, and yesterday we had a chance to show Luis Aguirre Torres some part of IRC, and he was very excited, and he told us of the funding and possibilities with this group. So this group is not limited to those individuals the groups that you saw mentioned. No, it's open to everyone. Our common goal is to find a meaningful way to move people to economic prosperity and to help fight this challenge facing all of humanity, climate change. So we are open to all. It's all of the above. That the motto is all of the above. Any suggestion, we are welcome. Is welcome.
Okay, I just have one other quick question. How many, you focus on green jobs, how many of your sponsors are in that business are green job related?
So a design build is it's a construction firm, and you know now with the new building codes in the county and I think the town, every organization has to basically now be in the green process, in the green business. CSP management, even though CSP management is real estate, their buildings are now being either retrofit or actually moving towards. So all of them, plumbers, electricians, will now have to stream their businesses towards a sustainable future. And this is why we are very excited that everything, the goal is to have all businesses green, is to paint everything green. So all our, our collaborators, including the unions, are trending towards providing a workforce that is very knowledgeable in the green science and green economy.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go to Diane and then Annie again.
Okay, quickly. Hi, everyone, and nice to see you, and thanks for having us. Thanks, Aloja. Yeah, just to add the length of the program, we're still talking about that. We've had more than 140, I think, over the years. People participate in our job training programs at Finger Lakes Reuse. And so what we're doing is we're kind of building on that. We're in this pilot phase right now that we've had 7 people go through. Traditionally, we've had a range of a 15 to 25 week program in our technology piece where people are refurbishing computers. And then when we got into doing our reentry program 2 or 3 years ago, we extended that to 12 months. And we've actually been somewhat flexible with that, paid from day one, because people reentering need a longer period of time. We're right now, one of the things that we're grappling with is there's approximately 12-week roots of success curriculum, and how to integrate that with the day-to-day operations and find balance in the trainees' experience. So that's been one of the things that we've been exercising over the past year, and it's very exciting. I think Finger Lakes Reuse and our partners are recognizing. I think Luis saw it yesterday, the range of experiences that people can have in the reuse environment. There's so many different types of things, and we've become an extremely busy, more than a $2 million organization, and it's people get a real world work experience with us, and having Aloja bringing BOCES and the unions to the table, they're excited too. They recognize that. So it's been an exciting year, and a lot of thanks to Rich for helping bring us together and attending, meetings week after week so that we can kind of navigate this. So it's been a work in progress, and really excited about what we're looking towards.
Thanks, Diane. Sounds great. Annie?
I know you had a specific ask, Aloja, like, is there any suggestions that we have? It sounds like you're pretty well connected, especially, with Rich John helping you. Are you connected with say, for instance, Workforce New York and the other workforce development programs around the county already? Okay.
Oh yes, they are at the table bi-weekly, and Jackie, Grob, I have to find her $50. I finally could pronounce her name well. She is very much part of. She's at the table. Natalie has not been able to attend as much, but they are all invited. But Jackie is helping us in many ways. We've also reached out to Historic Ithaca, but yes, but just to be specific, that is very much part of.
We're talking to GIAC too, with some youth, some summer programming with youth. We're continuing to talk to many different organizations.
And the YES program, Ithaca, I think it's through Ithaca Youth.
Through the Youth Bureau, yes.
Okay, great.
And thankfully, the 4-H program of CC also, has positioned us in a way to be able to reach to more partners in the future.
Well, I'll be glad to advocate for the support that you'll be asking for. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you, actually, everyone. We just the support we have had from the county from the get-go has been tremendous, and we hope to make you proud.
Thank you. Sounds great. We really appreciate the information that you did send last night or the day before. I would suggest that although it sounds like the fall is when we do our budget, actually it's coming right around the corner. I know Diane is well aware of the budget cycle as chair of the board of the Human Services Coalition. You know when things have to go into the county administrator. So even though the people wearing those hats are changing, this basic cycle will be the same. So it's not too early for you to actually get concrete about what your request would be and to start thinking about that. And Rich, of course, is well aware of that too. Rich, go ahead.
I just wanted to make the committee aware that the group has been seeking funding from different directions. And in fact, I believe submitted a grant proposal to NYSERDA for a heat pump training program that's really exciting. So yes, I anticipate they're going to come ask the county for money, but it's not the only place they're going to go. I think we're also going to approach the city and make sure they're aware of this program and the good stuff that could come out of it. So.
Okay. Very good. Anything, anybody wants to add or any other questions? All right. Well, we're a little bit late, but we kind of got there. Thank you for coming. Aloja, Robin, and Diane, Kelly, Jennifer, everybody else, Heather. Really appreciate your time. If there's nothing else, then let's consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you all very much for coming today and for your time. All right. Take care.